This is a video review of my experience using the DPVR E4 Black. DPVR sent me this headset about a month ago, and I've spent the last few weeks testing it out and comparing it to other VR headsets to see how it stacks up. My first impressions of this headset were that it looked really quite good. It looked like a professional and well-made headset. It's actually really light. It's a lot lighter than most other PC VR headsets that I've ever used. The construction does feel a little bit plasticky, but it's all pretty solid and I haven't had any issues with it at all. It's an exclusively PC VR headset that uses a wired connection to a VR-ready PC. The DPVR E4 Black has a single LCD display panel with a resolution of 3664 by 1920, and this equates to a per-eye resolution of 1832 by 1920. This is a very similar panel setup and resolution to the Quest 2, so we're expecting visuals that are on a par pretty much with the Quest 2. When I initially saw this specification, I was a bit disappointed because obviously the Quest 2 is now several years old and there are quite a number of headsets that have pushed the boundary on resolution, and it does make quite a bit of difference when you push the resolution up. Coupled with the display panel, this headset uses Fresnel lenses, again similar to the Quest 2, and it has an FOV claimed by DPVR of about 116 degrees. In reality, when I'm using this headset, I feel that the FOV is very, very similar to the Quest 2 and a bit less than other headsets like the Quest 3, the Pico 4 and the Pimax Crystal that I've got behind me there. It definitely has a higher field of view than the HP Reverb G2, which is one of the headsets that this headset is aiming to replace as a contender for an affordable PC VR headset. In terms of setting this headset up, it really was very, very simple. I literally got it out of the box. The DisplayPort cable comes connected. All you do is connect the DisplayPort cable and a USB cable into your computer. This was dead simple. And then halfway along the cable, there is a little box where a power connector or power cable connects into. So it was simply a matter of connecting this to your computer. It took me all of about 2 minutes. And then I had to download the DPVR Assistant application from their website. I installed this and then turned the headset on, and the headset was automatically detected by the software and I was ready to go. In terms of actually using the headset, when you go into the software, there's a button to launch Steam VR. This headset works with Steam VR, so any game that is compatible with Steam VR, you can use it with the DPVR E4 Black. The only issue I had with this headset was the first time I booted it up, I couldn't get the sound to work. I have encountered this issue before with other headsets, and it's usually due to the wrong sound source being selected by your computer when you're using something, and so I knew it was a fairly minor issue. I was actually really pleased that in the software there's a little troubleshooting tab that you go into, and one of the troubleshooting buttons was fix sound issues. I clicked this and within about a minute the sound was correctly set to output the headset's speakers. So this was actually really welcome that the only issue that I had was very, very easy to fix. In terms of actually using this headset, it's very, very simple. I was able to launch straight in to all of my Steam VR games and any other games that are compatible with Steam VR. I haven't had any technical issues using it. In terms of wearing the headset, the facial interface is like a foam material. It's pretty comfortable to wear. It doesn't make a perfect seal around my face, but it's pretty good, and the amount of light leak is pretty minimal. The gold standard for me and light leak is the likes of the HP Reverb G2, which has absolutely no light leak. This isn't quite as good as that, but it's not bad at all. The downside in terms of the comfort of wearing this headset is it's not with the facial interface or the front of the headset at all. It's actually with this head strap. The DPVR uses this flip up halo design, which I actually really like. I like the concept of it, but there are two problems with it. Number one, the rear head strap that supports the back of your head isn't great. The head strap at the back just sits a little bit high, and this leads to the back head strap sitting a little bit high on your head, and it doesn't feel desperately secure. If I were DPVR, what I would do to fix this is, number one, I would change the rear cushion for the back of your head. It needs to come down further and it needs to support the back of your head. But there's actually a more mechanical issue preventing this head strap coming down to support the back of your head well enough, and that is that the hinge it can't go past the front of the headset, so it can't go down. In terms of the controllers for the DPVR E4 Black, I'm reasonably impressed. The layout of the buttons is very, very similar to the Quest 2 and Quest 3. This I'm very happy with. The controllers feel very comfortable. The batteries last a long time. The tracking rings don't really get in the way too much. In terms of the tracking performance of the controllers, I was actually really impressed overall. Certainly when the controllers are in front of you and in a large enough box in front of you, the tracking is excellent. The only drawback of the tracking performance is when you put the controllers either below you or behind your head. I found that this was significantly worse than the tracking performance on the Quest 3. In terms of everything else, this headset has integrated speakers which do a reasonably good job. The sound is not wonderful. It's probably on a par with the Quest 2, probably not quite as good as the Quest 3, definitely not as good as the HP Reverb G2, which has very impressive integrated speakers, but it does a reasonable job and I couldn't really complain about it. It also has a 3.5mm headphone jack at the back, which is very welcome, and I appreciate that. In terms of the visuals themselves, obviously the resolution of the panels in this headset are not really on a par with some of the more modern headsets that have released over the last year or two. For example, it's got a lower resolution than the Quest 3, than the Pico 4, than the HTC Vive Pro 2, certainly than the Pimax Crystal, although it's a much more expensive headset, so that's not really a fair comparison. But the visuals essentially are the same as the Quest 2, which is now your 3.5-year-old headset, and it's a bit outdated. And I can understand why DPVR, obviously they have to balance making this headset affordable, as an entry-level PC VR headset, but I don't know whether it's a smart idea to compromise so much on the visuals. Now, having said that, if you were looking for a PC VR headset, an exclusively PC VR headset, and one of your requirements was that it must have a DisplayPort connection so that you get an uncompressed video signal to your headset and reduce latency to a minimum, then what are your options? Up until recently, I would have said the HP Reverb G2, but Windows Mixed Reality is going to be discontinued in the very near future, so I don't think that is really a very clever option to buy right now. The HTC Vive Pro 2 has a much better resolution and much better visuals than the DPVR E4 Black, but it is a lot more expensive. It's around about $800 for the headset itself, but you will need external tracking stations. So if you don't already have these, it's going to make it a considerably more expensive headset. The other option that you might like to consider is there's a new headset from Pimax that is due to release in the next couple of months called the Pimax Crystal Lite. This basically takes a lot of the features of the Pimax Crystal, but reduces the price by omitting features like automatic IPD adjustment and dynamic foveated rendering and things like that. But it maintains the excellent resolution of the Pimax Crystal. In terms of pricing, the DPVR E4 Black is about $600, whereas the Pimax Crystal Lite is going to be $700. I haven't tested this headset yet, so it's hard to compare, but it's certainly one that I would be looking out to see, is this potentially a better option than the DPVR E4 Black? So there is a niche for DPVR for people who are looking for an entry-level PC VR headset. But you can't ignore the other competition in the space, and that is from standalone headsets that can also work with a PC VR connection. We're of course talking about the likes of Pico 4, Quest 3 and Quest 2. All of these headsets do a very good job connecting to a PC, and they allow you to play all kinds of PC VR content. The only difference is they use either a USB connection with compressed video signal, and this introduces slightly worse visuals and a little bit of lag, or a wireless connection, which again increases the lag more significantly. Now, what I would say is that unless you are very sensitive to lag or have very particular requirements to minimize lag as much as possible, you would probably be better looking at the likes of the Quest 2 or Quest 3. The Quest 2 can be purchased for $200, so a third of the price of the DPVR E4 Black. You can connect it to your computer with a USB cable. The lag is so minimal that most people aren't even going to notice it, never mind be negatively impacted by it. And the difference in visuals with compression of the video signal for most people is almost imperceptible. Certainly it doesn't bother me in the slightest. So if you're looking for a real entry-level PC VR headset, I would say it's got to be either Quest 2 or Pico 4, which has better lenses, better resolution, but is a little bit more expensive. Alternatively, the Quest 3 can be got for about $500, but you do need to factor in that the head strap of this is much worse, and you are limited by the battery life with these headsets. So that is a plus to the DPVR E4 Black. Certainly for me, having tested the DPVR E4 Black for a month, I think the proof of the pudding is I'm not going to continue using it as a PC VR headset. I am going to go back to using my Quest 3 because I find that the visuals are so much better. The lag is almost imperceptible, particularly when using a wired connection. And the other headset that I'm going to go back to is obviously the Pimax Crystal. Although again, this is an unfair comparison because the Pimax Crystal is so much more expensive. But with the Pimax Crystal Lite coming out, there's really very little price differential between these two headsets. And I just think it's likely to be a much better option for most people. Now, you might think that that's all really negative towards the DPVR E4 Black, but it's not. This is actually a really good headset. It's just that the design choices I don't think have been that great. Every individual component of this headset has been reasonably well thought out. The headset's really light, it's fairly well balanced, the facial interface is good, it looks great, the audio's pretty reasonable, the software is excellent. I've had no issues whatsoever with the software. It's slick, it worked first time, it has given me no bother at all, and that's half the battle with PC VR headsets. The only quibbles would be build quality or build materials. It does feel a little bit cheap, a little bit plasticky, but I can live with that and it's not that bad. Audio probably should be improved. The rear head strap definitely needs to be improved. This just needs to be redesigned, which shouldn't be an insurmountable obstacle for DPVR. But the biggie here is the screen resolution, the panel resolution, and the lenses just don't really cut it in 2024. If anyone's tried this headset, please let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and take care till the next video.